Hey everyone, welcome to Vintage Booth Pro. My name is Crystal, and today I want to talk about pricing for your antique booth business. I have started a series where I talk about the basics of starting an antique booth, finding that perfect spot and then finding inventory, creating a buyer persona. And now I want to talk about pricing. And I will be perfectly honest with you, it is one of the most difficult things that is to get right. It's difficult to get it right. Um, but what I did, I went to my group, posted an image that just said, let me know your pricing strategy. And I had a ton of feedback. So, what I did with that knowledge, and if you're not a member of my Facebook community, head over to Facebook after you watch this, and it's a free group. Everyone's welcome to join. What we have a huge amount of people that are just willing to give their advice and their wisdom. People that have been doing it way longer than me and have learned the ins and outs, the right way to do an antique booth business. And so I'm pulling their information and some things that I've learned along the way and putting it into these sweet little 5 rules that you can use as you continue your antique booth business or as you start it. And I would love your feedback. If you have something different that I haven't talked about here, please comment below. Or if you've learned anything new, let me know below too. I would truly appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to do that and share with any vintage booth owners that you know. Okay, so I have a funny strategy that I always think about when I'm pricing for my vintage booth. So when I was in high school, my English teacher had us write stories, as English teachers do. And she said the one rule that you need to remember with writing a story is that it should be long enough to cover the subject, but short enough to keep it interesting, kind of like a woman's skirt. And so, is that a great rule with pricing? You want it to be long enough to cover your cost of goods, any time and resources you put into it, but short enough to make it interesting to that perfect buyer that hopefully will come through your vintage booth. So I keep that in the back of my mind, kind of just a crazy thing. Will it help you? I don't know. Or is it just crazy? But the pricing strategy that is best for you, and it's going to be different for every person and probably even every item that you put in your booth, will make the customer extremely happy while maximizing your profit. And really, that's as simple as it gets. But finding that perfect balance is not easy. But with some testing and adjusting, you'll eventually be able to get it right. And I still get it wrong after 3 years. And I know because my gut is always telling me to get the most money out of it as possible. But really, I want to make that quick sell. So, anyways, I'll go into the stories that group members have shared with me, my own personal stories, as I go through these 5 roles. And before I begin, when I first started, I did create a video that was something I learned that was just an aha moment that I had never thought of when starting this whole journey. And if you have followed me a long time, you know that I really knew nothing coming into this whole thing. And I've just learned a ton. And there was a YouTuber who's an absolute incredible resource for the vintage booth world. But she had this idea that you should always use the 3X rule for your pricing. And so that is completely based on your cost of goods. So it covers the cost of goods, covers your rent, and covers your profit. So that while that was hugely helpful for me as starting out, it has become more of something I look at for sourcing. So it's not a rule that I'm using, and many people kind of scoff at the idea to use that now. But I use it for sourcing because when I'm looking at whether weighing if I want to buy something or not, I think can I 3x profit on this, and that will just help me. So it's really more of a guideline than anything else. So just keep that in mind. If you've never heard that, I hope it helps you. It helped me a ton, but now it has grown. My knowledge of pricing has grown so much since then, and just keep that in the back of your mind. But consider these rules as you continue with your pricing strategy. Okay, and I do want to, so there are 5 things to consider that are not rules, but just remember the cost of your item and sourcing. So your time is the most valuable thing you will ever have. And so consider the amount of time it took you to find this. Did you travel across the country? Did you drive 3 hours to pick it up? Put that into the pricing, please, because you need to be paid for that time. Consider supply and demand. Is this something that everybody else has, or is it a completely rare piece? So that should go into the factors you consider when doing your pricing strategy. Competition are other retailers selling it for cheaper. So my store is a hop, skip, and a jump away from Hobby Lobby. So I do come across Hobby Lobby items very often, but I have to remember that they are right beside me in the next shopping center over. So yes, I look at them as competition. Home Goods, Target, all those types of stores. Other booths in my store, I don't look as competition, but other antique stores, I do. Consider the condition and quality of your item. While it might be rare, is it in mint condition? Does it have wear and tear? So something to keep in the back of your mind. And seasonal and economic factors. What we're going through right now in the economy, I don't want to talk about because it makes me sad. But we have hyperinflation, and that's just reality. You have to consider that, and especially your part of the market, which I will get into as we get into the rules. So here we go. Just some of those things to consider with pricing. But now I want to talk about the 5 rules. So, the number one rule, and you have to do this no matter what, is to understand your market and your buyer persona. So, research customer purchasing habits and budgets in your specific market. Are you in a rural area or an urban area? Are you in a tourist town with tons of traffic? So then you consider that and set the prices that resonates with your market. Obviously, the best way to figure this out is to work in your store. Not everyone has the opportunity to do that. I've never been able to, but if you get the chance, jump on it so you can see the age groups of people that are coming through, the style preferences of things people are buying, what collectors are looking for, and that sort of thing. And I want to read some of the comments that the group members had that helped me put this video together. I am fairly new to the process, but I'm at my booth, A Moment in Time, located at Southern Home Outlet in Dalton, Georgia. Some things cost me little or nothing. I price in a range that almost anyone can afford because I know many don't have big money to spend, but being able to buy a little something for themselves or their home makes them happy. And that makes me happy too. I really love that. Another group member says, my little bit of advice is to price what I would realistically pay. Before I was a vendor, I was a longtime shopper of antique malls, and so I always consider that I am pricing for a customer like me. I want quality items, curated, clean, and while I pay more for pieces I must have, the booth overall needs to be affordable. And that is from On Heron Hill, and they are at Craftique Small and Garden Tea Lounge in San Antonio, Texas. So that goes perfectly on the lines with understanding your market and knowing your buyer persona. If buyer persona is kind of a foreign concept to you, I have a video for you and I will link it here, just helping you think about the types of people that you want to source for items for your booth for. Okay, our rule number 2 is to know your goal. Now, I always get the saying wrong, but do you want a fast nickel or a slow dime? Do you want to get all the profit out of the item that you possibly can? How long are you willing to wait? How common is the item? Pricing is not a fixed strategy and should be adjusted based on your goals. I met one of the vendors in my mall and she actually has 4 booths, but she has small things. She says she prices to get rid of things. She Her sheet at the end of the month is like this long because it is so many things. I couldn't source that much, so I have to consider that she has to keep 4 booths full of little things that are priced lower to help move fast. But that is her goal, and that makes sense for her. I had a group member say, I am at 4x cost plus whatever the market will bear. I pay 25% commission and I'm here to make money. No matter what you think of that, that is that person's goal. And that is exactly following the rule and they're getting it done. So I actually really love that. Another group member says, I know that I price too low, but my markup is frequently 10x my cost. So I'm happy and customers are happy and returning frequently. So that's a great point. Once you figure out your buyer persona, get that pricing just right, those customers will keep coming back. Rule number 3 is the biggest one, no matter what. Almost every person that commented said this. Research, research, research. Do not focus on the cost of your item, focus on the value. So rather than considering the 3x guideline, consider the question, how valuable does your market think this product is? By focusing only on the cost of goods to set pricing, it's possible that you are leaving money on the table. So I'm going to go into the group members' comments on this. There are a lot, so hang with me. My role is research. Research online, research at stores in your area. I feel like researching in your area is most important. Love to Pieces in Heritage Antique and Designer Mall in Gastonia, North Carolina. I consider what I paid, research prices online, and price mine lower. I think that is key. General rule of thumb is my product costs 10 to 20% of my sold price. 30% equals my cost, rent, commission, fuel, vehicle maintenance, tags, etc., which leaves a 50% profit. Although not every sale falls into those margins, which is why research is mandatory. I would never blindly put a 3x my cost price on items. And that's what I was saying earlier. Don't forget your time and all those little things that go into sourcing items. Another group member says, pricing is difficult as I've learned everyone has their own reason for doing this. Some folks want to make money, some folks want a hobby, some folks just want to pay for dance lessons for their kid. Yes. There is no right or wrong way, but my best advice is research and know your numbers. Make sure you take in account for your sourcing time and extras like tags. Don't forget that. The hardest thing I had to learn is what sells best in my area and not paying too much per item. Great, great points there. Another group member says, doesn't matter what you pay, absolutely depends on what it's worth. I look up everything I buy, several sites, average it out. Perfect price works for 20 years. So that's what I'm saying. These group members have so much more experience than me. So if you're on the fence about joining my group, just do it. You'll get a lot more value than just my meager sales and my meager expertise. My booth fees are 12.5%, so I try to price my items at least 4x what I pay for them. I make 2.5x my investment this way. If my item was $5 at minimum, it's marked up to 20. This is a general rule. I will absolutely mark an item I found for $1 up to 60 if I know it will sell for that much. If I pay up for an item, I'm usually happy doubling my money. For instance, I paid $55 for a swung vase that sold for $175. After my booth fees and cost of goods, I made just under $100. That's an awesome sale. Another group member says, I don't always base my price on cost. I have gotten things in a box lot that cost less than $1. I usually price things by how much I would pay. I also research solds online. For items I pay more for, I want at least 2x cost, but hopefully 4x. So research, research, research. eBay, WorthPoint are great places to go look. And yeah, just be sure that you are looking at on eBay what has sold rather than what has listed. There are a lot of sites like Cherish and Ruby Lane and other resale sites, but people really have crazy ideas when it comes to listing items super high. So just be sure to look at what items have sold for. Rule number 4, keep up with market trends and competition. It's important to keep an eye out on your competition, study their prices and offerings. And one thing that's kind of crazy that I like to do, I honestly don't shop at antique malls that often, but I do go and look. I look at displays, I look at items, how they have created vignettes, and I absolutely look at pricing. I will stop and pull out a price tag and take a picture of it. If it's something similar that I have, I want to keep up with the market. Sometimes I'm shocked at the high prices that you see in antique malls, and that's okay. That is based on their goal, and that's fine. But another piece of that, besides your competition, is looking at market trends. And that's something we talk about a little bit in our group. For a while it was dark academia. Now we're hearing like grandpa chic, which is just the funniest thing. But understanding what the trends are that are popular and what people looking for in antique malls. I will say that farmhouse, hippie white things will always sell. And if that's considered farmhouse, I consider it more shabby chic. And that's always going to be a popular item in my opinion, but that is something we talk about over in our group. And yeah, and Pinterest is a great tool for that as well. One group member says, I think walking through regular home decor shops like Target and Hobby Lobby is helpful too for price ranges. Not only just to see what they have, but for their price ranges helps a ton. Rule number 5, test, monitor, and adjust. Finally, it's critical to always be monitoring and reviewing your pricing strategy. Um, no pricing strategy is ever set in stone. I will say one of my favorite people that I work with in my antique store always says to market high because you can always mark it down. It's a little bit more difficult to mark things up, but if you market high, you can kind of test the market and see, and then adjust accordingly. I will go into what some of the group members have said. Pricing is strictly based on what your customer in your market will pay. However, I do a lot of bundle purchases and try to determine that one or two items will give me my money back, so the rest of the merchandise is free. This allows me to price reasonable and or have frequent sales. And that's a great point. If you can figure out how to bundle items, I think that is huge. Another group member says, for a new seller, the 3 times rule is a good starting point unless you're in a mall where the rent is very high. There are, of course, many exceptions like box lot goods or stickers. If something seems really good and I look it up online, I usually price about half what eBay averages. Something to consider is how much space will the item occupy. We pretty much pay by the square foot. So if something is occupying the same 6 feet for too long, it might be wise to mark it down. Everyone has a different situation, so do what works for you. And that is such a great point. You really have to look at how much these items, how much square foot these items are taking. If you are wanting to move them quickly and bring in more items. And something along those lines is be willing to negotiate. I don't get a lot of calls about negotiating, but people will make offers occasionally, and sometimes I'll come back with a different price, and sometimes I'll say sure. So be willing to negotiate, bundle if possible, and mark down and adjust your prices to get those sales. Okay, so this is kind of a bonus. I should have mentioned this in the beginning, but I love learning about consumer psychology and things that you can do with your pricing to help the consumers be a little bit more interested. And so, one conversation we have a lot in the group is how you price your items as far as the cents. So, do you end in .99, .95, etc.? And I did try that for a little while, but I'm just going to read some of the tips that I've learned from different studies of traditional retailers that have done these studies on consumer pricing psychology. Okay, so that I was mentioning is called charm pricing. Psychological pricing relies on simple changes to trick the brain. One of the most well-known strategies is called charm pricing, where businesses knock a rounded dollar figure down by 1 cent. So the brain reads $12.99 as $12 and not $13. Personally, since I did try that, I've learned that many retailers use that .95, 97, 99 as sell items. So a consumer may potentially see your item as having less value because many traditional retailers use that as sell items. And but on the other hand, it's a way to add almost a dollar to your price. So I kind of see it both ways there, where you want to trick the mind into seeing it's 12 instead of 12.99, almost $13. But for me, I'm going to stick with just the whole number and not add cents. Another psychological pricing thing is odd even pricing. Studies have shown that customers purchase items that end in an odd number more often than they purchase items with an even number. And for example, 179 versus $180. So consumers will tend towards the $179. I've tried that recently in I don't have a lot of 179 items. Mine's more like $29 versus $30. Price appearance and ditching the cents people makes people feel like they're spending less money. Longer prices appear to be more expensive than shorter prices, even if they're the same number. Indeed, $12 12 feels cheaper than 12.00 because the number isn't as long, which is just really interesting how they can get into the mind of consumers and study that. So that is kind of another reason I'm just leaving cents off of my price tags. Okay, and these are just some tips about the science of pricing, and I've been doing this to kind of push the prices up a little bit. For example, the science of pricing tells us that a customer considers a $9 item to be worth $10. So why not market $10? So I've kind of been doing that. If I would normally put a 7 or 8 or 9, then I would just mark it $10. And then this is super interesting. People like to think in fives. So if you would typically mark something $13 or $14, it might as well be 15. And that can be considered all the way up to $100. So if you're going to mark something $43, you might as well mark it $45 because people think in fives. So I think that's a great tip, and I've definitely been using that one. But it stops after you get to 100. So consumer psychology supports pricing in increments of 25 in this price range. So rather than saying 119, I would go 125 and then just rank 125, 150, 175, etc. So that's kind of interesting. Consider bundle pricing. For example, a customer is more likely to purchase a bundled price at $20 rather than individual items totaling 25. This is because the perceived value of the bundle appears higher due to the round number. And I actually didn't realize this, but do you know those 2 or 3 tier trays with a bunch of items on it? One vendor in our store did not price any of that individually. They had a full bundle price on the tier tray and everything on it. I don't know what the cost was, but I thought that was hey, a great idea. Another effective pricing strategy is anchoring, where business strategically set a higher price item next to a lower price item to make the lower price item seem like a better deal. For example, placing a $50 watch next to a $100 watch can make the $50 watch seem like a steal. So I don't know. What do you think about some of those consumer psychology hacks? I love it. Super interested in anything like that. If I could ever go back to school, I would be 100% focused on retail. But yeah, those are my pricing strategy rules and some hacks for you to help pricing and make a little bit more money in your antique booth business. So I hope you've gotten some value out of this. If you do, I would appreciate so much you liking this video. Maybe consider sharing it with other vintage booth owners, and I will talk to you on the next video.